You join me here today at Glastonbury Medieval Fair, because today we're mixing fantasy with Warhammer.
When making a diorama, you have an idea of what you want to make. And to get those elusive, juicy thoughts on paper, well, foam, you need a base. And they come in all different shapes and sizes, but for today's idea, I decided to make my own. So let's get cutting some foam. Now, you may only see foam and a pair of extremely pale hands, but let's talk about what this will become. In the world of Warhammer 40k, somewhere in the outer colonies, there lives a feudal planet of humans where their day-to-day lives doesn't look too dissimilar to our medieval relatives. Despite all that was stacked against them, somehow they've made hover units, helping them plough and transport goods. And amongst the peasants and vagabonds lives a tale of the Green Angel, a being who stands 10 feet tall with wings of fire, purifying all with an evil heart with flame and justice. Now, if you ask me, these are just made up stories from nobles, aimed to inspire and make the outer city think they are safe from the blight that surrounds them.
Hey, it's me again. Who would have thought, right? I've just released my new Patreon and YouTube membership. Wow.
So what does this mean? For patrons and YouTube members, you'll gain access to my diorama content a month early, like the clip you just watched. I didn't want to paywall my main content as I'd like as many people who enjoy it to see it. But if you like what I do and have any coffee or pint change, there's now a way you can throw it at my internet busking basket. And thank you, I really appreciate everyone who even watches these videos. That is more than enough support. Anyway, back to the video. So after creating our diorama with air drying clay and some cheeky Smart Mud 2.0, it's time to make the man of the diorama. Today we are making a Primera Space Marine belonging to that of the Salamander chapter. The Salamanders are one of the first founding chapters and have been known to have an unusual concern for that of human life. Well, for a Space Marine at least. So, let's get painting. I started airbrushing with what is clearly too thinned down Vulcan green, and once I got the mixture right, I switched to a Zenithal highlight with Warpstone glow for some nice and easy highlighting. Then it's time to paint the shoulder pads in any black paint. I also took the time to black out all of the under armor and accessories so it looked more cohesive when I decided to paint the rest of him. I also gave him an inner edge highlight of light grey, but later on I decided this wasn't for me, so I did get rid of it later on. Once that was done, I painted all of the trim in the best golden paint ever, Elven Gold by Scale 75. Okay, so it's time to paint the flame on his shins, but I got really focused. So much so I let my hair down, literally, without realising it blocks the camera, but don't worry, I'll talk us through it. So I started by sketching some flames by stippling a matte red paint until I was happy. Next stage was stippling an orange paint on the inside of the red flames, making sure not to go outside of them. And finally I repeated the same step with yellow, but really tiny highlights inside of the orange. And I was actually shocked at how good this looked, considering I didn't even look up anything before this. I was quite happy with it. And of course for the eyes, I like to put an orange contrast paint on the inside, and then dab some yellow contrast in the middle, and it creates this nice gradient. So after quickly painting the purity seal, it was time to add his transfers. And this is the part that gets me sweating. It'll look perfect, and every time it's dry, I swear it is suddenly wonky. Anyway, every good warrior needs his trusty weapon, so let's get painting his flamer. Now, with the flamer, I decided to do something a bit different, so I grabbed several bronzes ranging in brightness and saturation, and tried my best to wet blend them in a nice gradient. I kinda wanted to make a nice burnt gold, and in the end, I kinda like it. It's definitely needs some improvement, but it's good enough for now. Then the next stage is to paint all of the metallics in a lovely black metal. And if you ever wondered or wanted to get that tiny writing on the purity seal, I really recommend these tiny micron pens. They are literally amazing. And if you actually have good handwriting, unlike me, I bet you could create literal masterpieces. So let's finish up the base coat by painting all the leather in Rhinox hide with some lovely light brown highlights. And then all that's left to do is add some shading. I glaze some purple all over the metallics for a nice colour contrast. Next, I added a black enamel wash over the chest and shoulder pads for some depth. Also, an added benefit is the enamel wash gets rid of any shine from the transfers, making them have that painted on look. Okay, we finally finished the Salamander, and it's time to get back to the diorama and build a fence. So I hollowed out one of the pieces of balsa wood so that I can hide some secret wires in there later, and got on building with this quaint fence. So I think this diorama is looking a little bit bland, so let's jazz it up a bit by getting out some foam flocking. And we are going to sprinkle this everywhere, as this will add so much texture to the diorama, and make it look like there's some actual grass chilling around. And to make sure it's all glued down, I soaked it all in isopropyl alcohol and white glue. Now, on this feudal planet, a tragedy has struck. The night before, the mayor's son has gone missing with no notice. After spending the night searching, the villagers find a horrifying sight. Skeletons and carcasses are strewn all over the place. In the outskirts of this village's sewers, they spend a night they will never forget. Once they return, they tell the sheriff, who turns up with his trusty flamer by his side. While it's probably not lore-friendly, I do love the idea that this space marine gets left behind on this feudal planet, and somehow becomes the sheriff of the town, dealing with any Xenos threats that come his way. So I wanted to paint this father and son in a really easy way. It was actually for a shorts challenge that YouTube was running that I participated in last month. And while I know a lot of people hate the enamel poured over the base coat, I think it looks pretty passable for what barely took any time. Okay, so you might have guessed things are getting a little Nurgly. Or at least some spawn of chaos has been harassing this planet. I wanted to paint this horror in the most chaotic way I could think of, and what better way to do that than literally slapping a bunch of random paints that resemble some colours of rot to get this disgusting skin tone. If you're interested, I'll leave the paints in the description below. But I was actually really happy with how this is turning out. I think the yellows, blues and greens all blending and mixing in with each other really added this horrific, in a good way, tone to the model. So after the skin, I painted his loincloth in a white paint, and all of his arm teeth in a tooth colour, and finally some blood for the blood gods all over the gross stuff. However, I do regret putting it over his stomach. We'll talk about it another time. But after one final enamel wash, he was done. Okay, so it's time to sit back and relax as it's airbrushing time. So let's paint the diorama, starting with some striking Scorpion's green, which gives us a lush summer feeling all over that ground. Now, to ruin that nice vibe, I added some brown into the mix to make some nice shadows. Now, for the skeletons, I poured on a mystery paint. I think it's a skeleton horde mix with something, maybe non-oil. I actually have no idea what was in this. I made it over a year ago. And once it dried, I painted all the clothes in some generally peasant-y looking colours. After painting the metal grates, I added one final mixture of a dark brown enamel wash. And that's the skeletons done. So next we can chill out and paint some wood to look like wood. I did this by stippling a lot of light browns and generally getting lighter towards the top. And I also added a green paint to make it look a bit mossy near the end. We're fast approaching the end now, which means it's time to prepare for my literal worst nightmares, soldering. Thankfully I spared you the agony of watching me do that, but afterwards I tried to make it look like a big Cheeto, or some fire is what I was actually trying. And there it is, the diorama in all of its glory. It was my first time trying an LED fire effect, and I think the next time I try it, it's going to be pretty epic. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a cheeky like and sub. It will mean a lot to me, and as always, I've been Reese, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.